Hi everyone, and thanks for stopping by. Today we're going to be talking about using chicken manure in your garden. But first we have to talk about how to compost it. Fresh chicken manure will harm your plants and must be composted first. Make sure to follow these steps to make your own chicken manure fertilizer at home. Your compost pile should be made of equal parts manure, brown ingredients, and green ingredients. Some examples of brown materials are things like fall leaves, pine needles, twigs and chipped branches and bark, straw or hay, sawdust, and any paper products like newspaper, paper plates, napkins, coffee filters, and cardboard. Some examples of green materials are things like grass clippings, coffee grounds and tea bags, vegetable and fruit scraps, also your trimmings from perennial and annual plants, eggshells, and seaweed if you have that available in your area. Now I'm going through and I'm screening some of the compost that I've already been working on making. The reason I'm doing this is because we want the beneficial bacteria from this compost to help jumpstart the new stuff. I'm going to pick out any worms and put those in with it as well. And then if you don't have any of this, then you can find some compost that's already been made and include that to help jumpstart your pile. Now we're going to take these materials and mix them up equally. My browns and my greens were actually mixed up together. You saw before I was actually touching this barehanded. You don't actually want to do that. So make sure you're wearing gloves whenever you're handling any of the chicken manure and things by itself. So my manure and my pine shavings and things were mixed together. So I'm actually mixing that up, 2 scoops of the pine shavings and manure to 1 scoop of grass clippings because I've got my brown and my manure mixed together, and then I'm adding the green to it. So also I'm wetting this down as I go because the manure and pine shavings are very dry from coming out of my coop. And then you want to make sure that you get that moisture right. Make sure to keep mixing as you go. Make sure to keep wetting it down, and we'll talk about the moisture in a minute. You want to make sure it's not too dry and not too wet. You want to make sure you keep piling this on and mixing it together until you get at least to about a yard high. Yard and a meter, they're pretty close to each other. So a yard high, meter high, and you've got a pretty good pile there. That'll make sure to heat up well. And like I said, make sure you've got some finished compost, whether you've made it yourself or whether you've purchased it. I think the stuff that you purchase may not have quite as good a bacteria. Maybe you could grab some soil, fresh soil from nearby, and put it in there too. Either way, you should be able to get some kind of beneficial bacteria that should help you to break down your pile. Once the pile is made, you can cover it with a waterproof cover and leave it for 4 days. Make sure to check the moisture during this time. Keeping the moisture right is important. Compost shouldn't be too wet or too dry. If you pick up a handful of the compost and squeeze it, you should only see 1 to 2 drops of water. At the 4-day mark, you can follow the steps for compost troubleshooting that are covered at the end of this video. If you have to add to or change the pile, make sure you add 2 more days to the process. After checking it after 4 days, make sure that you turn the compost pile every other day for 2 weeks. By the end of the 2 weeks, your chicken compost should be darkly colored, close to the same size as the original compost pile, and have a sweet, healthy soil smell. Chicken compost may actually need about 5 weeks to break down. I've only described about an 18-day process at this point. If you're concerned about possibly burning your plants, you may want to go ahead and continue this process for 2 more weeks where you're turning it every other day. This is actually a modified version of an 18-day composting process that I found that I'm applying to this chicken compost for my purposes. So I actually just kind of wanted to see how it would work after this 18-day process, see if I would still be able to use it. So I'm going to experiment with some plants, and if you'd like to see how that works out, then please like and subscribe. Also, if you have any questions, please post them in the comments below. Now we're going to talk about some general tips for compost troubleshooting. If your pile stinks like mine did, then there's too much nitrogen and you need to add more shredded high carbon material. High carbon materials are things like sawdust, shredded paper, shredded cardboard, and dry tree leaves. All of these materials need to be shredded to increase their surface area. Because of the high carbon, it'll take them longer to break down if you don't shred them. Low carbon materials are things like green grass clippings, horse manure, cow manure, chicken manure, rabbit manure, and fish. So that's actually what I'm doing here. I'm going through and I'm adding some extra shredded leaves to help out with this smell. I'm going to put these on top, and then I'm going to mix these in to help get rid of the extra smell that I'm getting because of the extra nitrogen that's in this pile. To make these shredded leaves, I like to run over them with a lawnmower, or you can put the leaves in a barrel, bucket, or trash can and use a weed eater to shred them. But make sure you be careful with this method and make sure you remember your safety gear. If the compost is cooler on the outside and hotter in the middle, then it's too dry. If it's hotter on the outside and cooler in the middle, then it's too wet. If the compost is too wet, you can use this as an opportunity to turn your pile. You can try putting some sticks underneath the pile and or relocating the pile to help with drainage. If your moisture is right and your compost isn't hot, your compost pile might not be big enough. Make sure to pile your compost higher. As always, thanks for watching. Please help to support the channel by liking and or subscribing, and have a great day.